Welcome back to Cheche, the program where opinion counts on Citizen TV. We're having an intense discussion about the ICC with the Senate Minority Leader, Moses Wetangula, who represents Bungoma. He's our guest this morning. Now, of course, you remember that he's a former foreign minister. He's also a lawyer, so he's been outlining his legal opinion on Kenya's position, well, Parliament's move to withdraw Kenya from the ICC. What you haven't quite done is told us what CORD is going to do in response to this Jubilee-led initiative to pull Kenya out of the Rome Statute, because, as we recall, CORD walked out of the debate, and which some of our viewers think was cowardice.
Not necessarily cowardice, and sometimes, like I said in the floor of the House, that courage is not courage if you use it to knock your head against the wall. In the Senate, we debated the matter fully. In fact, if you go to the Hansard, probably more CORD senators spoke on the motion than the Jubilee senators. But at the end of the day, we were guided by a conscious decision that we didn't want to be party to a decision we don't agree with. That's why we withdrew from the chamber, and in any democracy this happens.
Okay.
This is not something unique to Kenya. In the lower house, our members participated to some level, and then we withdrew from the chamber. But the point was made, and come to the next level, again, we owe a duty to our country, to our people, including our president, to tell him the truth as it is. And we'll continue pointing out that the highway we are taking, the avenue we are taking, is not helpful to anybody, least our compatriots who are facing cases at The Hague.
So if we go back to the issue then that you were talking about before the break, bringing in the African Union and African countries, David was making that point. The question becomes, how do you respond? Because the question that was asked of you was whether CORD had any diplomatic initiative to counter the Jubilee position of mobilizing support against the ICC. You, of course, said, you know, it's already been done. The African Union has taken a position. But Kenya is now being seen as the country that is leading, or that will be responsible for any sort of African non-cooperation with the ICC. We haven't heard any articulated position from CORD in response to this sort of dubious distinction that Kenya seems to be earning for itself.
You probably didn't listen and follow the debate in the Senate, or as sometimes we expect, we are given poor media coverage on the matter. I did say, and it was followed up by several members, that number one, Kenya is a respected African country. And I do recall when I was the foreign minister of this country, I was literally the de facto spokesperson for the continent on many issues, and you covered me many times.
I did, in my previous capacity as the BBC correspondent.
What we are doing now is rapidly slipping into a position that is not good for our country. One, a country is good, is important, is respected if you respect what you sign to. Your standing among nations is questionable.
You see,
if you sign a treaty today, you abrogate it tomorrow. You issue a license today, you revoke it tomorrow. You start putting question marks on yourselves. Number three, like I did say, within the African arena, many African heads of state are quite reluctant to embrace the ICC as a court that can help this continent. Indeed, many of the cases at The Hague are emanating from Africa. For good measure, actually. For good measure, that you may recall, if you look back at your history, that 10 years ago, 75% of armed conflicts in the world were in Africa, where there were massive violations of human rights, extermination of populations, the genocide in Rwanda, and many of these things. So the focus on Africa was not malicious or misplaced. It was because it was the arena where things were happening. I have said many times, and I want to say it again here, that yes, I see some degree of bias in the conduct of the affairs of this court. I have said many times in the international fora, even at the UN, that I would have loved to see, if justice was applicable to all, I would have loved to see former President George Bush and former Prime Minister Tony Blair at The Hague for their massive violations of human rights in Iraq. It did happen. But we must know that two wrongs don't make a right. That so-and-so was not prosecuted for punching you on the nose doesn't mean that so-and-so should be left to go scot-free for doing the same. They're crimes, and they must be addressed.
I guess, Mheshimiwa, maybe you don't have an answer to this question, that what is called doing proactively to challenge the initiative by Jubilee to take Kenya out of ICC. Any diplomatic initiatives. In the previous administration, we saw the shuttle diplomacy by government, yes, and there was opposition which did its rounds to present a different position that a section of this country held.
I can assure
you. And those
two
positions contested. Yes. Eventually, I think either the international community was listening to the opposition to the shuttle diplomacy, or shuttle diplomacy did not succeed.
I can assure you, David.
Now, in respect of this one,
yes,
the court position might be known, but is it being pushed to achieve impact internationally? And then on the local front, this contest has been, taken over by Jubilee, so to speak. The crusade is take our president out of ICC, take our government. It's a shame to be tried out there. The whole notion of justice and reparations, compensation is lost, which somebody would expect would be the substance of code.
I think, David, I'll go back to where we had left earlier. Shouting or speaking with loud voices that take the president out of The Hague does not help under these circumstances, because it will not happen. Even if we repeal the act and abrogate the treaty, it will not happen.
Okay.
And court does not want to be involved in non-events. That's number one. Number two, that we have not been saying we're reaching out to diplomatic conduct doesn't mean we're not doing. I have personally traveled around the region to pursue our cause. You don't, at this day and age, I don't have to go to Rwanda to talk to the president of Rwanda. Raila doesn't have to go to Nigeria to speak to the president of Nigeria. We can make contacts.
Okay.
And we do make contacts. That we are not gloating and talking about it doesn't mean we're not doing it.
Let's look at the...
But when the bills come to the House,
yes,
you will definitely hear very reasoned, intelligent, robust voices.
Yes, at that point...
To tell Kenyans that this is wrong, these are the consequences, and we should not go that way. That we choose to go that way doesn't mean it is right, or doesn't mean we have no position.
All right, let me ask for your opinion on something that is particular.
Yes.
The government has stepped in to clear this IDP mess, of course, preceding the trial, so that they're cleaning home, and we can say action has been taken. Yes. Is CORD satisfied with the government's action, the compensation? Some people have said others were not compensated. There are complaints and so forth. What is your position? Are you satisfied with the government action or response?
There are two things. To begin with, we should never have IDPs in our country. That, I think, is a view held by all. That we inevitably have them because of our bad practice in politics in the past. It's regrettable. Now, when you look at the recent knee-jerk reactions towards dealing with IDPs, we are far from satisfied, because we are spending 3 to 4 billion public funds. One would have expected that this is brought to the parliament with a full list of beneficiaries. These are public funds. With a full list of beneficiaries, lest everybody be satisfied. What is the money for? How is it going to be used? Remember, we have various categories of IDPs. We have those who are violently uprooted from their properties and went to camps. We have those who are living in markets and moved to camps with the hope they will get somewhere to settle permanently. You can't slide them for that. But if you want to settle the issue of IDPs, then apply a uniform formula. There are people who are given 10,000 and told to go away. They did, and some are roaming on markets, living destitute lives. So if these billions were available, one would have thought, because we have a committee that used to deal with this, we have parliament in place, one would have thought we bring the entire profile and catalogue of IDPs and say, this is money available, this is how we intend to settle.
Now, pursuing
like I've said before you interject, David, people moved out of their farms. Their houses were burned. Their farms were not burned. Why aren't we assisting these people to go back to their farms instead of giving them money and telling them, you can go open a shop, you can go buy a farm, you can go build a house? This is an irrational manner of dealing with public issues.
It's refreshing to hear your position on that, because I don't believe we've seen a considered opinion on this issue from court anywhere.
True.
And that is the point,
Yes.
that we have no considered opinions from court articulating positions on anything that is going on in the country, which goes back to the criticism of an ineffective opposition being fronted by court.
Following our meeting on Monday, we have, as CORD, taken direction where by next week we are naming sectoral spokespersons.
Yeah, you don't have a shadow cabinet.
We are you know, it's a very tricky situation. This is not a time where you have cabinet in the house and you name a shadow to mark them.
Why don't you do that?
But we are going to name shadow spokespersons on every sectoral issue. And it will become easy for the media, for anybody who wants reactions on agriculture, to go to well-known, defined leaders from CORD. And of course, the three of us, Raila, Kalonzo and I, will be constantly available.
The three captains of the ship.
To deal with issues. But you will see an entire profile of spokespersons on sectoral issues. And I do agree with you that we should have done this a lot earlier than we're doing, but the right time is the time we have chosen.
Okay.
We're going to do it.
So speak to the criticism then that part of the problem, part of the delay, has been that the opposition ship, the CORD ship, has three captains.
That is not true at all. We have three captains with the defined roles. One was our presidential candidate, so he's the first among equals. One was his deputy, and one is leading the Senate. And we have leaders in the National Assembly. To us, and I can assure you here, that we have not even once had a situation where we're having a difficulty in making a decision or taking a direction on any issue simply because the principles are three. I think we have had a very cordial, and will continue having a very cordial
working relationship. So if we go back to David's point then about diplomatic moves to counter the government's lobbying of African countries, yes. I recall you in your previous iteration as a Minister of Foreign Affairs doing just that, engaging in shuttle diplomacy at the African Union whenever an item came up on the agenda that you felt, the government then felt, was not favorable to its agenda. So why then, if you say that Jubilee has the tyranny of numbers and CORD has the tyranny of brains, why then has your expertise not been tapped into to counter all this diplomacy we're seeing?
Start with the African continent. You recall, because I saw you at the AU many times, that I was a very large voice within the structures of the AU on many issues touching on both Kenya and Africa. And we did very well. Why CORD will not...
Well, one of your missions, I think, apparently was, if I remember correctly, there was an effort to disband the Annan panel.
Yes.
And I think you were pushing for that. And civil society countered, saying
Yes.
that Kenya still needed the efforts of of Kofi Annan and his panel.
We didn't quite want to disband the Annan panel. What we had said was we wanted to loosen their grip on the process. That was my instructions at the time. that they had helped us bring peace. We had signed the accord. We now had a parliament. We now had the issues that could be handled by the parliament. And the coalition government was in place. So Kenya felt that we didn't need a prefecture at that time. We could deal with things internally.
Okay,
Yes.
so we come back to the present.
Right.
And why CORD is not tapping into your vast experience.
Like I've told you, CORD has not in any way given its back to diplomacy. We are fully engaged with those who matter. Like I did say...
Is it true to say...
let me finish that.
No, is it true to say that
Yes.
CORD is a little shy on this matter of the ICC for fear of being perceived to be crucifying, the president or taking an unpopular decision that is anti-Kenya?
We are not crucifying the president. We are not crucifying the vice president. I opposed Hague. The vice president wanted Hague. So what crucifixion can there be? Number two, we have said very clearly, even in our retreat on Monday, that we wish the president and his deputy and Yang Sang well and a fair and just trial at The Hague. How better can we say it? Number three, we are also conscious that there are victims to this issue. Number four, we have said that even if it was good and fashionable and just to pull out of The Hague, it will be totally unproductive and unhelpful.
So are
How
you
much
shying
more
away
can we
then?
say that? Is that being shy about the matter?
Are you shying away? Another reason is that there are those who wonder why the CORD principal, Raila Odinga, is not at the ICC.
Many people have asked questions that why aren't the two co-principals in the last government not at The Hague? That question can only be taken in academic terms now, because The Hague is ongoing. It's the prosecutor who made a legal decision as to who to prosecute. It is the prosecutor who announced that he had zeroed on 6 people. I remember very well Okambo first saying, without naming names, that he had 22 names. Then he descended to 18. Then he descended to 12. And eventually, he took 6. How he arrived at that is anybody's guess.
There are moves by some Jubilee politicians demanding to be given the envelope that work give to...
Whether that envelope is opened today or kept away, it will be opened one day anyway. And it's
So what is the meaning of that?
It's in the... Let me say what I've just said.
Yes.
The power to prosecute lies with the prosecutor of the court, based on facts and evidence available to him. If the prosecutor tomorrow feels that I or you, Mutegi, in your journalistic conduct contributed to this, that file is never closed. Anybody else can be subsequently charged. The only thing that the law will prevent is to be charged for a crime you have already been charged with and adjudicated on. But any other person who is subsequently found to have been party to this can be prosecuted.
So I'm asking, why are these people asking for the envelope? In your understanding?
To me,
in terms of politics?
they're playing politics from the rooftop.
Okay,
The matter is coming up, and well, the debate that happened here, and we asked earlier here whether it wasn't going to jeopardize the trial. Indeed, I think today the court is going to listen to submissions
yes,
on the fact that this case was discussed by the Kenyan Parliament, and they want to explore the impact of it and
in terms of witness protection.
and so forth. There have been a lot of things which, my own thinking, Mheshimiwa, is that CORD is a bit ambivalent about this whole ICC.
What is it you want CORD to say that we are not saying?
I mean, there's so many things around this
Yes.
case going on.
Right.
I mean, for example, there are all these allegations about, witnesses being
Bribing.
bribed or pulling out, the case falling apart, and therefore, regardless of how the case finally turns out,
Yes.
the quest for justice may not be served. Here are, IDPs being settled. There are complaints about some of them not being, treated well or missing from the compensation or different standards of compensation. The case is going on there. A lot of things in the air around the ICC, the motion in the House, the bill coming. But CORD seems to be sitting out here, not very articulate, the voice not so well heard. In a country where you are supposed to carry the aspirations of those who are not agreeing with the government, isn't there something that is weak or missing in this whole?
We have voiced concern,
Yeah.
and even at our last PG, part of our resolutions was to raise serious concern about the possible compromise of the cause of justice by either intimidating, bribing, or coercing witnesses to withdraw from cases. But remember, David, where I started, that we believe in the rule of law. And I don't think it is right for us as CORD to make ongoing criminal prosecutions a day-to-day agenda, discussing the case, even contrary to the legal expectations within court procedures.
Okay.
It is not right.
All right.
And we